we take a look this morning at animal welfare and especially take a look at the trafficking of wildlife. If you'd like to join us, 1300 800 222. Have you come across things like this when you've been overseas, where you've seen that you can buy things that are made of, that are wildlife products that are possibly endangered or extinct? Just the simple fact that you can still get shark fin soup in Asia and shark fins. When I was surprised to see a program on shark fins the other day at the extent of trafficking of shark fins in Asia. And it's supposed to be illegal, but you can still find shark fins everywhere. 1300 800 222. Join us. Reese Halter to you. Good morning.
Good morning, Trevor. You've touched a chord of my heart, and oh boy, I'll try and ease up on the passion here. But
this is on shark, because shark fins, you don't like that.
Mate, and here's the rub for the listeners. And I saw the show. I'm so blessed. I get to watch most of the Australian telly. Y'all throw it up, and it's beautiful. But here's a very, very important two things that are extraordinarily important. Number one, the trade in live and dead animal parts. Now, this isn't according to Dr. Reese. This is according to the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. It is worth each year $400 billion.
I thought it was 40 billion.
No, it's 400. And that number, Trev, is so large that it supersedes drugs, armament, and human smuggling combined.
Do we know how they work that out, Reese?
Well, yeah, the MI6 and the CIA and the Australian Secret Service have got numbers, and I'll tell you why. Because, Trevor, it's run predominantly by organized crime, and it gets even more sordid. And this is truth. Most people will recognize this. Our banking systems around the world are in strife. The debt to equity is off the charts. And so what's happening, whether we like this or not, they're washing most of the proceeds of this $400 billion per annum through the banking system. And of course, nature cannot sustain this continued pummeling, whether it's in the ocean with sharks or whether it's with the rhinos or whether even, Trevor, yesterday, it was heartbreaking. Mate, they're trading dugongs.
Serious?
There's and it was on the ABC. Y'all have one. I gotta say, kudos, because the environment site section on the ABC online is the finest, thankfully, on heaven, on earth, because the information is becoming sadly more and more restricted.
What are they trading with dugongs?
Well, they're trading them live and dead parts to anybody who will take it. Because this is black market, Trev. And here's the thing. The numbers are so extraordinary. The upwardly mobile class in Asia, in China alone, but in Asia, is the size of America. 300 million people have mega disposable income. And they're buying anything and everything. I mean, this will break your heart if you don't already know this. Grizzly bears. I love grizzly bears. I mean, a grizzly bear is the size of a couch. They're huge. And they gorge themselves on the coast on 3, 5, 7, 900 pounds of fish each, because the sows have to add 200 or 300 pounds to their body to go in hibernation, to give birth whilst they're sleeping. And the Asian market, Trevor, we find these creatures, they're slaughtered, their gallbladders are removed, and their claws are cut off for aphrodisiacs.
Reese,
mate, let me introduce you to a purple, a yellow, a green pill. Leave my animals alone.
Reese, the thing is that we governments don't have a lot of control over a lot of things, okay? So they might find it hard to control organised crime with drugs. They might find it hard to control organised crime with gambling. You would think that a government can control the safety of their wildlife.
Well, it's the so here's the 64,000. That's the bad news. I mean, we scratched the surface on it, but here's the good news. So for every problem, there are at least 3 solutions. What do? We get to the kids in Asia. How? With the movie stars, with the sports players, with any of the singers, the recording artists. We've got to touch them now because, Trevor, I'm telling you, mate, if we don't take very strict action now, in a decade, it's not looking good. And in fact, here are the real numbers. Never mind a decade. By 2020, in less than 5 years, Trev, if we don't collectively come together for the rhinos, they're gone. What is the rhino horn? The rhino horn is made of keratin, the same stuff as our fingernails. Do you know it's being used as a party drug in Asia, a hangover cure, an erection helper, and it has 0.0 medicinal value. It doesn't cure hangovers, and it doesn't cure cancer. And these creatures, there's a tough Aussie, and I wish I knew his name on the tip of my fingers, but he's a former secret special service. He's tough as nails. He's over in Tanzania. He's training people to protect the few remaining rhinos. And Trevor, when they get these rhinos, it's so unbelievable. They don't kill them. They cut their Achilles tendons so they can't move, and they hack off their horn while the animal's alive, and they leave it to bleed to death. It is absolutely off the charts, and that horn is worth $500,000 in cash, U.S. greenbacks, and these people, they don't know that kind of money. And then it's ground into a dust, and people are paying $100 or $200 for a half a gram.
You see, Reese, the thing there, Reese, is though that local populations have to be given an incentive not to poach.
Yeah, too right. And we're using drones now, and they're trying to protect. They're trying to protect them, but organized crime is. You're right. When you offer so much money, these people are willing to risk their life because what else?
Yeah, well, they got to feed their family.
Right.
Julian joins us. Hello, Julian.
Yeah, good morning, Trevor. Good morning, Reese. Yes, I've got one of those kangaroo paw scratches. I bought it in Sydney about 18 months ago.
I'll tell Reese about them in a minute.
And I've also got something that which I had from my childhood, which you'd probably get put in jail for now. We used to collect emu eggs and blow emu eggs.
Yeah, my granddad used to do that.
Yeah. Well, I've still got a couple somewhere in a cupboard.
Yeah.
They're just good things, and I can't imagine that happening this day and age.
These are historical things, and I do apologise to everyone a little while ago when I said that they used to make whale feet stands to put things in. It wasn't whale feet, I meant elephant, but for some reason I said whale feet, because obviously whales don't have feet. But thank you for everyone who told me that. You see, this is the thing, Reese, when we go, I guess there's still no excuse for 40, 50, 60 years ago that there was like a trade in ivory, that people bought whale feet stands to put their umbrellas in. You would think we've grown a bit since then, in that there wouldn't be a market anymore for these things, that we would have become a little bit cleverer.
Well, here's the thing. We here in the West, yes, but again, this is a numbers issue. There's a 1.5 billion plus people in Asia, and then there's 1.3 billion in India. There's billions of people. Particularly the Asian culture has some affinity to every animal part that's going to cure every ailment, and the numbers are off the charts. Let me give you just one number here that's staggering, which you probably we heard the other night. My colleague Boris Worm at Dalhousie University and his lab, one of the formative ocean labs, looked at sharks, and from 2001 to 2012, and at least 100 million sharks each year for 11 years was poached. That's 1.1 billion animals. Mate, we can't sustain that. And when the sharks, which are the carnivorous sharks, are doctors of the sea, when they're gone, ecosystems collapse. And as you know, if the sea dies, we die.
I don't know why I seem to think that whale have feet, but I just did it again. So my apologies for that.
I heard that. I'll let it fly.
Someone said I've got a cane-toed purse. Yeah, but I reckon you're allowed to have cane-toed purses. You got a problem with that, Reese?
Yeah. No, well, the poor old cane toads, they wound up on the wrong continent.
I mean, but that's the thing, though, is that we need to recognise it, because I've got a text here saying, well, we eat meat and we use leather and so forth. We need to distinguish here between animals that are bred for leather and bred for food in comparison to endangered species.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we got to get a handle on how we're doing business, because it's out of control.
Does this include the live trade? Are we talking about the live trade of animals as well?
Yeah, live. You know, there's a major where the sea turtles are almost done, and the theft of sea turtle eggs is huge to satisfy markets in Asia again.
And in Australia, there's a big market in birds and also with reptiles.
Yeah. It's well, and you know, here's how bad it is, Trevor. The tropical fish industry for tanks is out of control, and we're losing more fish to aquariums than we know what to do with. It's bad.
Reese, I got a text here saying this is a third world issue and not really much to do with the Western world, and perhaps it's something the United Nations should be looking at.
Yeah, well, you know, we all need to be aware of it. I mean, yes, go to the source. Where's the demand come from? But it's because so much of nature is out of sight, Trevor, it's out of mind. And my job is to bang the pot and make everyone aware, because, you know, this is for future generations. And I just wanted to share with you one thing, because my business is sort of very gloomy, and I laid pretty hard facts on the listeners. Yesterday, we had an epic win. First of all, there are many poachers on the high seas. There's 6 nefarious poachers. One, Thunder, is on the bottom of the ocean off West Africa as of yesterday. Sea Shepherd, me mates at Sea Shepherd Australia, chased this boat Thunder for 110 straight days, and instead of the captain giving up yesterday off West Africa, the captain of Thunder scuttled his boat, and Sea Shepherd, Sam Simon and Bob Barker, rescued the 40 crew members and took them to Sao Tome, I believe is how I pronounce it, in West Africa. But it's the end of the Patagonia toothfish poaching boat, and it's huge. You know, these are people who care so deeply for our seas, and they rarely get kudos. So they got it from me.
I remember the Australian Navy chased around a Patagonian toothfish boat. This would have been about, 10, 15 years ago, and they chased it around for ages and couldn't catch it.
Mm-hmm. This is what they do, you know, these poachers. But they're paid god-awful sums for their illegal catches, Trav. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars. And we have the laws on the sea to protect the sea. But we have no countries that are really committed to doing the heavy lifting. And here's what we do. Not only do we patrol it, but when you get caught doing these nefarious acts, these people, Trevor, anywhere around the globe, they need to be put in jail for 100 years, and they need to be sentenced to crack rocks and they must be fined. And the companies that are behind all of this, the directors, 100 years in jail, and each company fined for each horrendous act $150 million. We have to break them.
Kim,
otherwise.
Yeah, Kim in Inverloch says humans don't realise that extinction means forever. I'll be glad I'll be gone from this world when tigers and elephants and lions are too. It's true. We need to realise that means you will never see them again.
Yeah, and yesterday I did a story. It was heartbreaking. Again, I'm sorry for these facts, but these are the facts. From 2001 to 2012, humankind removed 508 million acres of primary forest, tropical and boreal. That's the size of Alaska and Texas. And the main culprits were Russia, Canada, Brazil, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Indonesia, and Malaysia. This is like completely unsustainable. We're done without trees.
Chris, what's up with Reese, what's up with Canada? In that's not a third world country. They're not dependent on large companies clearing their forests. What's with Canada?
Well, it's a resource grab of an extraordinary epic. It's epic. The tar sands are polluting mega amounts of water and obviously the air, and the boreal forest, the northern, so it's the emerald crown around the planet. Canada shares a huge hunk, and Siberia, Russia is the other. And Trevor, they're just mowing it down as though there's no tomorrow. The bigger question again: where is the demand for this wood? Asia. And so they're just mowing it, and it's the Siberian tigers are almost done. All of the bears they're losing habitat, and I might add, on top of all this, the emerald crown is warming at an extraordinary rate, so that the forests are just everything's mixed up. It's changing so quickly. It's but we have the power and the technology to stop it.
Stephen joins us. Good morning.
We have the will.
Steve, good morning.
The thing that upset me the most about, because these other things are a long way away. But when I saw, can I say a name?
Yeah, no, of course. It's a well-known story you want to talk about.
Yeah. Glenn McGrath on the front of the paper with these elephants.
Yep.
I know all the cricket fans are going to hate me and probably come out with a gun and look for me, but they don't know what I look like.
They won't know
anyway,
to find you, Steve.
But no, I thought it was. I think people just like killing things.
Yeah, look, I'll fill Reese in. Reese, I don't know if you know this story. Glenn McGrath.
I did. I thought I didn't want to comment.
Yeah, and it's sort of sad because here we have an example of a role model for young people. Now, the story that went with it was that there was a whole lot of emotional stuff, but outside that, it was pointed out by many people who are shooters that this was a legal safari hunt, that the money that it's for culling elephants, and that if that culling isn't done, then the population doesn't exist, and that money goes towards keeping elephants alive and well in Africa.
Well, Trev, that's a lovely, heartwarming, touching story, for which I say balls. Here's the rub. You take away their habitat, and they got nowhere to live, and they die. Their habitat is being eradicated. So I don't buy any of that warm and fuzzy, we're shooting it to save it. Balls. It's just, that's poppycock. That's it's off. You know what? Well, I won't go there.
That's right. But I guess what they're saying is that possibly because of that, because of what's happened to the environment, that there isn't enough feed for elephants, and that because of that the elephant numbers need to be kept at a lower level, and that's the excuse that they use for the hunting. So what you're saying is, then don't eradicate their environment so that they can eat and be happy.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Hey, look, I got news. Anybody, you lose your home, where are you going to go? Street? You'll die.
See, they say this
You
about
have a rally or somewhere, so it's the same thing.
They say this about the lions, though. They say that this in the in the reserves in Africa as well, that the lions are very, very sick because of the environment that they're living in, and that there needs to be culling done of lions.
Well, again, that's a warm and fuzzy story, but I mean, the real deal is their preyers. They're losing their home. The ecosystems are diminishing, and you've got poachers who are getting extraordinary sums of money to supply Asian markets that want this. The whole thing's looped, and at the end of the day, you need a healthy population. Otherwise, the gene pool narrows, and in so much as a virus lands, the whole thing gets wiped out. So, who are humans to say we need 1,400 elephants and it'll all be good? And what is that based on?
See, actually, a conversation for another time, which we should have, is the idea of culling, Reese. Because recently in Victoria, there's been the story of koalas being culled and the need for a koala cull. The culling we'll need to do on a separate topic, because this is quite different.
Yeah, I know, but I will say one thing, Trav. It is related to their home. The koalas are sick, and there's too many of them. Why? Because the native eucalypt forests are vanishing. That's why.
I've got to say, with this one in the Victoria, and we'll talk about another, because I was sort of a bit supportive, because those koalas were the ones in Victoria were actually introduced. And that wasn't a natural place for koalas to live. They were introduced. So, but we'll talk about culling on another occasion.
All right.
Maureen, good morning.
That man was quite right, and so too was the man before. And you should bring the subject up more often.
This is as far as animal trading is concerned.
Look. This is the 21st century. Good heavens, haven't we come a long way? And the biggest culprit of all is China and some of the those countries, like Thailand or whatever. And if every one of us listening to you today, make it a point to do some good work in our lives. There's no use after all jumping up and down and letting off steam on the radio. What are you doing about it?
So what can we do?
If everybody here wrote a letter, just 5 minutes of your time, I ask, write a letter and a stamp to China, President of China, Beijing, China. That's all. You don't need a detailed address. It will get there. Don't expect a reply, but just tell them our thoughts and say that so many things are extinct, and it is up to the government there if they put a total ban on everything that's imported by way of animal parts for aphrodisiacs and what have you. We'll get somewhere. And keep that systematically every 2 months writing.
Because that's the other thing, Maureen, isn't it? That we can try and stop people from poaching in Africa, which are very poor people in very poor countries. But if you take away the demand, then there's no reason for that.
Exactly. That's one of the things, demand and supply of economics. If you take away the demand, then it will stop. So please ask everybody, Jack and Jill listening, write every 2 months to China. Now, look, we made the thylacine extinct, dodo. In Spain, the lynx has gone. I saw a beautiful program the other day with Attenborough, and he was showing us all these beautiful things and these birds, the bird of paradise. Did you see it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, look, Trevor, next time it comes, make a point of seeing it. These beautiful, beautiful birds. I mean, ages ago, the locals used to kill these birds to take the plumage and make feathers for their headgear, okay? But this time he was showing us how rare and beautiful. This little bird of paradise is dancing. And honestly, it looks like a little ballerina. It puts up its feathers like a cowl all about it to attract its mates. And it's dancing there. And an Italian, I don't know, he was some sort of it couldn't have been an ornithologist. But anyway, he came out here to see the bird of paradise. And they were watching it, dancing and doing. And then what does he do? He shoots it.
Maureen, thank you. I think that you've probably got Reese on side. And thank you. We'll go through some calls, Reese. Maureen, thank you very much. And that sentiment of perhaps trying to do something about stopping the trade and stopping people actually wanting them. G'day, Chris.
Both Reese and Maureen are very inspiring because a little bit of activism, I mean, what harm can it do, really?
Actually, no, the next couple of times we talk to Reese, one, we'll take a look at culling, and number two, we'll actually take a look at activism and the role that animal activists have in society, the things that they've achieved, and whether or not what was considered to be animal activism is now normal. So we'll take a look at next time.
And Reese pointed out both the global and ecological ramifications of this whole debate, which also involves the sharks, the oceans, and broadcasters like yourself and David Attenborough and the BBC, the ABC. Many broadcasters have tried to illustrate this with wonderful photography that we don't even know what's happening now with even the microbial changes that might develop when top-ranking predators like sharks can no longer eat, and the krill are all dying, and the plankton, and...
Too right.
Chris, different conversation, though.
Yeah, I know.
But you wanted to talk about your uncle from Germany.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot all about that. I got a bit carried away.
Oh, good, because that's what we wanted to talk about.
Okay, my uncle came here from Germany, and they are very wealthy by German standards, and they came here to my little western suburbs house in Sydney, and we have lots of palm trees and lots of nature around our little house. And he said, he was aghast, and he said, you have a little oasis out here because it involved the lorikeets and the cockatoos squawking. And the purely psychological benefits of nature, it made him feel good. You know, it was fantastic.
But they're also worth money.
Yes, and according to another program I listened to quite a few years ago, apparently, he told me, actually, he was the one that told me, in Germany, in a pet shop, you get an Aussie cockatoo for $3,000.
You see, this is where we have to realise, Reese, is that we can sit here as Australians and go, well, we don't do anything and nothing happens in Australia. Whereas there is a thriving trade in cockatoos and cockatiels, and there's a thriving trade in lizards and snakes from Australia.
And dugongs, as we just found out yesterday. Yeah, you know, it's around the world. This demented demand is taking the tapestry of life on Earth, strand by strand, and pulling that weave apart. And you don't need to be a quantum physicist. The strength of an ecosystem depends on biodiversity, and everything is interconnected. If we take all this stuff apart, at the end, it's end game. And we know enough, so, cut it out.
Chris said, why can't we start shooting people? But he's shooting stupid people. No, we can't say that. But somebody else has said, and this isn't a bad point, but it's worth a quick discussion. Somebody said, then why is it that Indigenous people in Australia are allowed to kill dugongs and sea turtles?
Well, I don't know. That's a whole different, I guess one assumes that they're grappling on the past when there were a few people and a lot of animals, and now it's the reverse. There are not many animals and a lot of people. And, look, you take it 3 steps later, and it's like it'll be cannibalism, right?
We should point out that that Indigenous custom in Australia is very, very limited, only to Indigenous people in certain areas in the Northern Territory, and they don't take very, very much at all. It's really just done purely for them to be able to eat and for sustainability. So it's more an Indigenous cultural thing. Although you environmentalists may still not be happy with that, because that's what many of the Swedish countries say about whaling.
Yeah, and we're even dealing, the Makah tribe in Washington State has got this cocked up thing about killing whales, and and here's the thing, Trev. Let's say you're all for every killing. The whales and dolphins globally are contaminated, mate. They've got off the charts methyl mercury, DDT, PCBs, bisphenol A's, phthalates, insecticides, and I'm talking off the charts. My colleagues in marine science have never seen animals more contaminated. The animals are telling us that we're killing the biosphere with our pollutants. So you know what? We dial back. Yeah, who amongst us hasn't made a mistake? I've made many, but you know what? I'm trying not to make them again.
David,
where we are.
David, good morning.
The short point, I think, I saw a program some years ago, and it featured an Indian man who I think subsequently passed away. He was fairly elderly at the time, but he had started in his early life as being an animal or tiger poacher or hunter. But at some stage during his life, he realised that he didn't want to be on that side of things and wanted to become a conservationist. And I suppose that's a good part of it. But he felt, despite having spent much of his later years dedicated to saving tigers and other endangered species, that he ultimately had the depressing belief that when there was competition between animals and people for resources, animals always would come off
second best.
And he was, it was quite a depressing outcome to the way he felt. But you do feel that is the way of life. And in the case of countries where the worst excesses are happening, or to feed their demands, it's where the greatest number of people inhabit, such as Asia, principally China and Japan, and to a lesser extent, and also India. There's just competition for resources, competition for agricultural land, and you've seen how habitats have caused the elephants to run amok and go through towns. It's just because they've lost. I think I even saw it in Australia, where there was some development in Queensland where they'd taken down a number of trees, and the koalas didn't have anywhere to go up, and so a lot of the ignorance, I think, is in the cultures that, although very old, they have this demand to want to get much wealthier and to approximate the standards of life that they've seen in the West, and in their hurry to do so, animals take a very distant second place.
David, it's a good point that you make. Reese, you would think that in China, as China becomes more westernized, because if it's Asian cultures or some parts of Asia where this is a major problem, that those customs might be deteriorating. As we saw in Japan, whale meat is no longer popular, and people don't like whale meat anymore. However, the government still wants to keep introducing it, but the general population doesn't want it and doesn't particularly like it. Do we need to see, and is there more education happening in countries like China to take away that trade?
There's indications of such. The government last year banned serving shark fin soup at all government functions. So yes, the government is aware the extent of which they can get a handle on 1 billion poor people and a unbelievable demand for animal parts remains to be seen. But there are shards of optimism, and as many of the listeners have said, we've got to keep a a stiff upper lip and a degree of optimism that something can change. Information getting to children, supporting wonderful groups that are helping around the world. My favorite, as you know, is Sea Shepherd Australia, but there are hundreds of great conservation groups, and I encourage everybody, give $10 a month. What's that? Make sure, check the group out and help, and physically handwrite a letter to politicians in Australia, elsewhere, and say, stop.
You're listening
We'd like to inundate them with hundreds of millions of letters.
You're listening to Overnights with me, Trevor Chappell. Reese Halter, conservation biologist, is my guest. Hello, Betty.
I've been listening, and I've got 2 points to make, if I may.
Of course.
In reporting these things, we advertise how much money it is worth. We should be saying not a handbag full of cocaine, say, is worth $1 million. A handbag full of cocaine is worth 20 years in jail.
Yeah, just refer to it as the penalty and not necessarily the money.
Not the reward. Then the temptation wouldn't be there so much.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we have poachers exporting our birds, but at times we have an abundance of these birds that are doing damage. There should be a government-controlled scheme where there are licensed catchers who do no damage to these birds. They are exported humanely. They don't die in transport. The price would come down. It would be a resource for the country. I mean, instead of $50,000 for a pair of cockatiels, it would be the cost of the transport, the cost of the catcher. It might be $50.
You know, that's not a bad idea.
And
Betty.
it would be completely controlled. You cannot control what is illegal.
And it takes away the trade.
That's right.
Unfortunately, with endangered species, that's not possible, Reese. But with things like Australian cockatoos and that sort of business, where there are a lot of birds, then perhaps if you make a legal trade in those animals, then it takes away the possibility of making more money.
Maybe, but it's very, very difficult. In nature, when populations go up, they come down pretty hard. The food source, as we all know. So I can see where you all are going, but it's tough. And handling the birds and then going overseas, the market is the market. If there's a demand for it, setting an artificially low price isn't going to correct it at all.
Oh, I was quite happy with that idea.
Sorry, mate.
Good morning, Shane.
Yeah, listen, I did marine sort of education down the Mornington Peninsula for many years, and you guys wouldn't have been around, but about 40 to 50 years ago, Port Phillip Bay was absolutely full of fish. And everybody used to have their own little net to get their own baiting fish and different things like that. So people used to sort of poach in a way, but there was such a huge amount of marine life, it was just normalised. But now we have a huge migration policy where I think it was about 620,000 people came into the country last year, and we've got other people with demands on the marine life. The problem is there's no signs up, there's no education. The government just seems to allow it to happen, and we've even got more of a stress on the marine life in the bay. And I just find it fascinating that there's all these advertisements on saying let's go fishing, and the fishing's really good. But I know for a fact that the fishing in the bay is the fish in the bay are dying, and the marine life that are coming in the bay for sanctuary are being torn apart by the huge demand on these fish. So it's just not the poaching; it's just the demand from the mentality of the generation that are coming on.
We need to take a close look at that, and thank you for the call. I've got a text here from Rick in Ontario. Who says, I'm sure birds are bred overseas because every pet shop in Canada has mainly Australian birds. I didn't realise there was such a huge market for Australian birds overseas, Reese.
Apparently, it's interesting. It's the allure, and it's exotic. Having a critter from the other side of the world is obviously a big deal, and it's difficult, and it gets into animal husbandry and cruelty, and et cetera, and mind-altering. And
just on I remember I went up to northern Queensland just after the film Finding Nemo came out. And talking to the people up in northern Queensland, they were saying around the Great Barrier Reef and around certain areas, you could not find a clownfish anywhere because after Finding Nemo, everybody wanted a Nemo fish. Everyone wanted a clownfish. And so there were people just going out in the water and just either nicking them, just going out there with their own little nets, or there was just a huge market in clownfish.
Yeah, that's a good example, Trev. I mean, it's stuff getting popularized on the big screen, and then there becomes an even bigger demand for it. It's difficult. I mean, the good thing on the upside is, look, if you're interested in learning about nature and seeing it, here's what I would say to any of these people who feels the need to kill an exotic animal. Buy yourself the best camera. Spend 20 grand on a camera and then get really close to a wild animal. Get the best shot you can. You obviously have got a lot of money. You want to show the world? Buy yourself 1,000 billboards. Put your name on the billboard and the animal, and don't be killing stuff.
And also,
we don't have much stuff left.
And if you want to show how brave you are, get up close to an elephant or get up close to a lion with a camera instead of a gun, and then you'll show how brave you are.
Right. Then you can boast to all your mates, and you can buy the biggest picture in the world and show everybody.
I got a lovely text here from Deb saying, I saw a beautiful YouTube clip with the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone and the ecological effects that it had. Then read the story. That was not necessarily true. And the story reintroducing these animals had an amazing effect on balancing nature. Do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, the quick, dirty story is when all the wolves, the apex predator, were removed, all the ungulates, the deer went into the creek bottoms, where they would never go if the wolves were there, and they ate everything. And they had massive erosion into the creek and big problems. But as soon as they reintroduced the wolves, the deer never went down into the creek. The creeks came back, the erosion left, and it's amazing how nature has this hierarchy, and the doctors of the wolves or the sharks or the whales or the dolphins keep their populations of prey fit by removing the old, sick, and weak. And Trevor, they prevent diseases from becoming epidemics.
I've also got text here saying, someone's asked for can you please give us the address for China's president? We'll see what we can do.
The next time I'll put it on the web. How's that? Come to my website, drreese.com, and we'll put it on the web. Good idea.
Oh, it's beautiful. Look, Reese, always good to talk to you. Next time we have a chat, we'll take a look at, over the next few times, we'll take a look at culling and why culling is done, whether or not culling is necessary, because it's a big topic. As well as that, we'll take a look at activists. What activists are, where activists still exist.
And I'll be there in July. Early July, I'm going to go to Perth. I'm going to go to Melbourne. I'm going to come back to Sydney, and I might even see you live in the chair in the middle of the night. We'll shake it up. How's that?
Look forward to it, Reese. I'll catch you soon.
Thanks, mate.
Reese Halter, our conservation biologist and our overnight's Earth Doctor.